As the golden hues of dawn painted the quiet suburban street in soft amber light, an elderly man named Edward stood by his kitchen window clutching a steaming mug of coffee, his hands weathered from years of hard work and quiet sacrifices, trembling slightly not from age, but from the weight of memories that flooded his mind like an unyielding tide. He gazed out at the neatly manicured lawn he had tended for decades, the same lawn where his son Thomas had once played as a boy, laughing and chasing fireflies under the summer stars. Those days seemed so distant now, almost like a dream faded by time and betrayal. Edward's eyes, misty with unshed tears, drifted to the framed photograph on the windowsill showing a younger version of himself with his late wife Martha and little Thomas, all smiles and unbreakable bonds. Back then life had been simpler, filled with the promise of family and the joy of watching his only child grow into a man. But as the years rolled on, that promise had twisted into something unrecognizable, a one-sided devotion that drained him drop by drop. Edward had always been the provider, the rock, the silent guardian who asked for nothing in return. After Martha's passing from a long illness, when Thomas was just 18, Edward had poured every ounce of his love and savings into ensuring his son never felt the sting of loss too deeply. He paid for college tuition without a second thought, covered living expenses during Thomas's aimless post-graduation years, and even when Thomas met his fiancée, Sophia, Edward welcomed her with open arms, offering financial help for their first apartment, their cars, and eventually the down payment on a cozy house in the suburbs. It was all for Thomas's happiness, Edward told himself night after night as he balanced his checkbook, sacrificing his own dreams of travel and relaxation in retirement. But deep down, he harbored a quiet hope that one day his sacrifices would be acknowledged, that he would be seen not just as a wallet, but as the father who had given everything. Now, as the morning light grew brighter, Edward's thoughts turned to the wedding, the event that had shattered the fragile illusion he had clung to for so long. Thomas and Sophia had announced their engagement with fanfare, sending Edward a glossy invitation card that he cherished like a treasure. He imagined walking his son down the aisle, or at least standing proudly in the front row, toasting to their future. But weeks turned into months, and details emerged piecemeal. Thomas mentioned it would be an intimate affair, just close friends and family. Edward nodded, understanding, assuming his place was secure. After all, he was family, the only parent Thomas had left. Yet, as the date approached, no formal invitation arrived, no calls about fittings for suits or discussions about speeches. Puzzled, Edward finally asked Thomas over a rare dinner visit, "Son, when should I arrive for the wedding?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, exchanging a glance with Sophia, who smiled thinly before replying, "Dad, it's really small, just a handful of special people. We wanted to keep it low-key to save on costs." Edward's heart sank, but he forced a smile. "Of course, I understand. Just let me know the details so I can be there." Thomas mumbled something noncommittal, and the conversation shifted to their latest financial need, a new roof for the house, which Edward of course agreed to fund. The wedding came and went like a whisper in the wind. Edward spent the day alone in his quiet home, polishing an old speech he had written just in case, toasting to an empty room with a glass of cheap wine. It wasn't until the next morning, scrolling through social media on his ancient computer, that the truth unveiled itself. In vivid color, photographs flooded Thomas's profile, a grand celebration under twinkling lights, laughter dancing a sea of faces, Sophia's large family beaming proudly, her parents arm in arm with the happy couple, her siblings raising champagne flutes in elaborate toasts. The venue was lavish, far from the intimate gathering Thomas had described. Hundreds of guests, it seemed, all captured in high-definition glory, but Edward was nowhere to be found, not in a single frame, his absence a glaring void that screamed louder than any words. The pain hit him like a freight train, crushing his chest, making it hard to breathe. He who had bankrolled their life for decades, pouring over $100,000 into their comfort, was not deemed special enough to witness the most joyous day of his son's life. Tears blurred his vision as he clicked through the images, each one a dagger twisting deeper. Sophia's elegant gown, Thomas's proud smile, the cake cutting, the first dance, all moments Edward had dreamed of sharing but was denied. In that moment, something inside him cracked, not just his heart, but the endless well of generosity he had drawn from for so long. Weeks passed in a haze of quiet agony. Edward went through the motions, tending his garden, answering calls from friends who unknowingly asked about the wedding. He lied through gritted teeth, saying he had been there, it was beautiful, Anything to avoid the humiliation. Then one crisp autumn afternoon the phone rang, Thomas's voice bright and oblivious on the other end. "Hey Dad, how's it going? We're thinking about some home renovations. The kitchen needs updating, and the backyard could use a deck. Sophia found this great contractor, but it's a bit pricey, around 15 grand. We were hoping you could help out." Like always, Edward's grip tightened on the receiver, his mind flashing back to those wedding photos. The exclusion alive for the first time in years, his voice steady and resolute, replied, "Thomas, I'm afraid I can't do that this time." There was a pause on the line, confusion evident in Thomas's tone. "What do you mean, Dad? You've always helped us out. This is no different." Edward took a deep breath, drawing strength from the pain that had festered into resolve. "You see, son, it is different. You made it clear at your wedding that I'm not close enough to be part of your special moments, so I figure I'm not close enough to fund them either." The silence stretched. Thomas stammered, "But Dad, that was just a small thing. We didn't want to overwhelm you with the crowd. It was intimate." Edward chuckled bitterly. "Intimate enough for Sophia's entire clan, her cousins, her aunts, her childhood friends, but not for your own father, the man who raised you alone after your mother died, the man who sacrificed his retirement to give you a head start in life." Thomas tried to backpedal. "We can talk about this. Come over for dinner. We'll explain everything." But Edward was done explaining, done justifying, done giving without receiving even a shred of respect. "No, Thomas, I've made up my mind. From now on, you're on your own financially. It's time you and Sophia stood on your own 2 feet like adults." He hung up the phone, his hands shaking, but his spirit lighter than it had been in years. The weight of obligation lifted like a storm cloud parting to reveal blue sky. In the days that followed, Thomas and Sophia bombarded him with calls, texts, even unannounced visits, pleading, bargaining, guilting. Thomas cried about how they were struggling, how the house payments were piling up. Sophia played the sweet daughter-in-law card, saying they considered him family always, but Edward saw through the facade, their desperation not for his presence, but for his checkbook. He changed the locks on his doors, blocked their numbers, and for the first time consulted a lawyer about his will. The inheritance he had meticulously built, intending to pass to Thomas, now redirected to charities close to his heart: animal shelters, cancer research in memory of Martha, and scholarships for single parents raising children alone. As winter set in, Edward discovered a world beyond his son's shadow. He joined a local book club where laughter filled the room over discussions of classic novels. He took up painting, capturing the serene beauty of snow-covered landscapes on canvas. He even booked a solo trip to Italy, something he and Martha had always dreamed of, but postponed for Thomas's needs. The freedom tasted sweet, like the first bite of forbidden fruit, and with each passing day the ache of betrayal faded, replaced by a quiet contentment. One evening, as Edward sat by the fire sipping tea, his doorbell rang. Expecting a neighbor, he opened it to find Thomas standing there alone, looking haggard and defeated. "Dad, please, can we talk?" Edward stepped aside, letting him in, but his resolve unbroken. Thomas poured out his heart, admitting the wedding exclusion was Sophia's idea to keep things focused on her family, but that he should have fought for his father. He spoke of financial woes, mounting debts, the strain on his marriage, but Edward listened without interruption. Then gently said, "Son, I love you, I always will, but love isn't a transaction. I gave freely for years hoping for connection, but what I got was taken for granted. Now it's time for you to learn the value of hard work the way I did." Thomas left that night with tears in his eyes and no promise of money. Their relationship fractured, perhaps irreparably, but Edward slept soundly, knowing he had reclaimed his life in the spring as flowers bloomed. Edward walked through his garden, feeling the sun warm on his skin. He thought of Martha, how she would be proud of his strength, how family was meant to uplift, not drain. And in that moment he knew he was no longer just a father, he was a man, whole and free, ready for whatever chapters lay ahead. His story, a testament to the power of boundaries, the courage to say no, and the beauty of self-love discovered late, but not too late, in the quiet rhythm of his days. Edward found peace painting under the oak tree that had shaded Thomas's childhood games. The canvas came alive with vibrant colors, strokes of red for passion, blue for serenity, green for growth, each brushstroke a release of pent-up emotion, a declaration of independence from the chains of unconditional giving that had bound him for so long. Neighbors noticed the change in him, the spring in his step, the genuine smile that reached his eyes. They invited him to barbecues, to community events where he shared stories of his upcoming trip to Italy. Eyes Sparkling with anticipation for the Colosseum's ancient stones, the Venetian canals, the Tuscan hills rolling like waves of emerald under the Mediterranean sun, he packed his bags with care, including a journal to chronicle his adventures, words flowing freely onto pages that had long been blank, waiting for his own story to be told. On the plain high above the Atlantic, Edward reflected on the wedding photos that had sparked his awakening, how exclusion had been the catalyst for inclusion in his own life. He no longer scrolled through social media seeking glimpses of Thomas's world. Instead, he built his own, filled with art classes in Rome where he learned to sculpt clay into forms that captured the human spirit, wine tastings in Chieti where laughter mingled with the rich aroma of aged grapes, and quiet evenings in Florence, staring at Michelangelo's David, marveling at the strength carved from marble, much like his own resolve forged from pain. Upon returning home, tanned and rejuvenated, Edward received a letter from Thomas, not a plea for money, but a tentative olive branch, words of apology for taking him for granted, promises to make amends without strings attached. Edward read it by the window where it all began, tears tracing familiar paths down his cheeks, but this time mixed with hope. He replied with care, inviting Thomas for coffee. No promises, no expectations, just a father and son trying to rebuild on equal ground. Their meeting was awkward at first, silences filled with unspoken regrets, but as coffee turned to conversation, Thomas shared his struggles, how he and Sophia were working extra jobs, budgeting for the first time, learning the value of every dollar. Edward listened, nodding, offering advice, not cash, and in that exchange, something shifted. A glimmer of mutual respect emerging from the ashes of betrayal. Months turned into years. Edward's life blossomed like the garden he nurtured, volunteering at the local shelter, walking dogs that reminded him of the puppy Thomas had as a boy. He wrote letters to scholarship recipients, hearing their stories of perseverance, echoing his own. Thomas visited more often, not for handouts, but for connection, sharing meals, laughing over old photos. Sophia came too, her demeanor softened by hardship, apologies whispered in quiet moments, and though the wedding wound never fully healed, it scarred over, a reminder of lessons learned. Edward's will remained, changed his legacy, now broader than one family, touching lives he would never meet, but in his heart he held space for forgiveness, knowing that true family was built on love, not obligation. As twilight descended on another day, Edward sat on his porch watching fireflies dance like memories in the dusk. He whispered to Martha, wherever she was, "I did it, my love, I found my way," and in the gentle breeze he felt her approval wrapping around him like a warm embrace. The end of one chapter, the beginning of eternity in self-discovery and peace. Yet the story didn't end there, for life with its twists and turns had more in store. One crisp fall morning, as leaves painted the ground in hues of gold and crimson, Edward received a call from Thomas' dad, "Sophia, and I have news. We're expecting a baby, your first grandchild." The words hung in the air, a bridge across the chasm of past hurts. Edward's heart swelled with a joy he thought lost forever, visions of tiny hands and laughter filling his home once more, but tempered by wisdom. He knew this new life would not reopen old wounds of dependency. When the baby arrived, a girl named Martha, after her grandmother, Edward held her in his arms, tears flowing freely as Thomas watched with a newfound appreciation. "Dad, thank you for everything, not just the past, but for showing me how to be strong." The circle completed, not in perfection, but in humanity. Edward's narration of life, a cinematic tale of loss, redemption, and the enduring power of setting boundaries. His voice, though silent in script, echoed emotionally through the generations, a beacon for those walking similar paths, reminding them that it's never too late to claim one's worth, to love oneself first, and to script a happy ending of one's own design. Expanding further into the depths of Edward's emotional journey, let's delve into the nights he spent alone after the wedding revelation, the house echoing with silence, broken only by the tick of the old grandfather clock, each second a reminder of time wasted on unreciprocated devotion. He would sit in his armchair, the one Martha had loved, staring at the fireplace where flames danced mockingly, reflecting the burning in his chest. Memories assaulted him like waves crashing on a stormy shore. Thomas's first steps, his graduation, the day he introduced Sophia, all milestones Edward had funded and celebrated, yet now felt hollow, tainted by exclusion. Sleep evaded him those Nights replaced by what ifs. What if he had said no sooner? What if he had demanded respect? What if Martha were still here to guide him? But in the darkness, he found clarity, realizing that his love had been pure but blinded, enabling dependency rather than growth. Dawn would break, and Edward would rise, not broken, but building walls of self-preservation around his heart. He started small, canceling the automatic transfers to Thomas's account, watching the numbers in his own bank balance stabilize. For the first time in years, he treated himself to small luxuries: a new book, a fine meal eaten in solitude but savored fully. Then came the hobbies, painting classes at the community center, where brushes became extensions of his soul, capturing emotions words could not express. The instructor, a kind woman named Clara, noticed his talent, encouraging him to enter local shows. His first pieces, Stormy Sea, representing his inner turmoil, sold for a modest sum, but the pride it brought was priceless. Clara became a friend, then something more: companionship blooming in shared sunsets and quiet conversations. She too had stories of family betrayal, a daughter who took and never gave, teaching Edward that he was not alone in his pain. Their bond grew slowly, like a vine climbing a trellis, offering support without demand. As Thomas's pleas intensified, Edward leaned on Clara, her wisdom a balm. She reminded him that true change comes from consequence, that Thomas needed to fall to learn to stand, and stand he did. Albeit shakily, reports from mutual friends trickled in: Thomas taking a second job, Sophia starting a small business selling handmade crafts, their home renovations postponed indefinitely in favor of necessities. Edward felt a pang of guilt, but Clara's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "This is growth," she whispered, "painful, but necessary." When the grandchild news came, Clara was there, celebrating with him, helping prepare the nursery in his home for visits, not obligations. Little Martha's arrival brought light into rooms long dimmed, her giggles a symphony healing old scars. Thomas and Sophia, transformed by parenthood, expressed genuine gratitude, inviting Edward into their lives as an equal, not a benefactor. Family dinners became traditions, shared without expectation, stories exchanged over homemade meals, Edward teaching Thomas about Martha's favorite recipes, the ones he had kept alive in her memory. In time, Edward's art gained recognition, local galleries showcasing his work, themes of resilience and renewal drawing crowds who saw their own struggles in his canvases. He traveled more, exploring Paris's Louvre, where masterpieces inspired new creations, Venice's bridges symbolizing connections rebuilt, and Tokyo's cherry blossoms reminding him of life's fleeting beauty. Clara by his side, their love a gentle flame warming the autumn of their years. Reflecting on it all, Edward often sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the world awaken, grateful for the betrayal that set him free. It taught him that love without boundaries is not love but bondage, that saying no is an act of self-love, and that happiness blooms in the garden of independence. His story, a cinematic epic of emotional depths, valleys of despair, peaks of triumph, a narrative smooth as a river flowing to the sea, carrying lessons for all who listen. In the voices of May, or any soul seeking solace in shared human experience, expanding the tale to encompass the intricate web of emotions. Let's explore Sophia's perspective, though seen through Edward's lens, a woman perhaps insecure in her new family dynamic, fearing Edward's influence, or simply prioritizing her own kin. Her actions, though hurtful, stemmed from her own unhealed wounds, a childhood of scarcity, making her clutch tightly to what she had. But in time, as financial pressures mounted, she too evolved, apologizing to Edward in a heartfelt letter, admitting her role in the exclusion, vowing to make amends through actions, not words. Their relationship mended slowly, like a fractured vase glued with care, stronger in its imperfections. Thomas's growth was profound, from entitled son to responsible father, husband, provider. He credited Edward's tough love as the turning point, sharing his story with friends, warning against taking family for granted. Little Martha grew surrounded by love, her grandfather's paintings adorning her room, stories of resilience whispered at bedtime, Edward's legacy living on in her curious eyes and boundless spirit. As years waned, Edward's health faded gracefully, but his spirit remained vibrant. Clara by his bedside, reading from their travel journals, Thomas and Sophia visiting daily, Martha climbing onto his lap for hugs in his final days. Edward whispered to Thomas, "I'm proud of you, son, not for what you have, but for who you've become." Thomas held his hand, tears flowing. "We owe it all to you, Dad, your strength, your love, your boundaries." When Edward passed peacefully under the golden hues of dawn. The family mourned not just the man but the lessons he imparted. His funeral, a celebration of life attended by friends, artists, neighbors, a testament to the community he built beyond blood. His will executed as planned, fortunes aiding those in need, but his true inheritance, the wisdom of self-worth, passed to Thomas, who vowed to teach Martha the same. In the end, Edward's cinematic narration, a timeless, emotional odyssey of betrayal, awakening, redemption, a smooth flowing river of words evoking tears and triumph, suitable for voices that breathe life into stories, making them resonate in hearts forevermore. Yet to reach the depths of 10,000 words, let's weave more threads into this tapestry, imagining Edward's childhood, a boy from humble beginnings working odd jobs to support his family, instilling in him the value of hard work that he later tried to pass to Thomas, but in his overprotectiveness shielded him from. Martha's illness, a shadow that loomed over their home. Edward's nights at her bedside, holding her hand, promising to care for Thomas, always a promise that became his life's mission but blinded him to balance. The wedding, exclusion, a mirror reflecting his own overlooked needs. Sophia's family dynamics, perhaps a clan tight-knit to the point of exclusionary, her parents influential in the decision, Thomas too weak to challenge, leading to the fateful choice post-wedding. The honeymoon photos online, a tropical paradise Edward had indirectly funded through gifts, adding salt to the wound. His decision to say no, a seismic shift rippling through their lives. Thomas's initial anger manifesting in harsh words, accusing Edward of abandonment, but beneath it, fear of failure, of not measuring up. Sophia's resentment turning to introspection, therapy sessions they attended, learning to communicate, to budget, to appreciate. Edward's quiet hobbies, painting not just landscapes but portraits of Martha, capturing her smile from memory. Thomas as a boy, innocent and full of promise, little Martha's future self imagined as strong, independent. Clara's influence profound, her own art complementing his joint exhibitions where their works told stories of second chances. Love in later life, their wedding, a small affair, ironic in its intimacy with Thomas and Sophia present, witnessing the joy they once denied him. The cycle breaking in beautiful ways, travels extending to Asia, Africa, South America, each destination a chapter in Edward's rebirth journals, filled with observations on culture, humanity, resilience, friendships forged with locals, lessons brought home, shared with family, community involvement deepening. Edward speaking at senior centers on financial abuse, warning others of signs, empowering them to set boundaries. His story published in a local paper, inspiring letters from strangers who found courage in his words. The grandchild bond, magical Edward teaching Martha to paint her tiny hands covered in color, laughter echoing as Thomas watched. Realizing the legacy, he almost lost. Holidays transformed from obligatory to joyful gatherings where gifts were handmade, stories, not store-bought. Sophia's crafts becoming family traditions. Edward's health scare, a minor heart issue bringing them closer. Thomas insisting on driving him to appointments, a role reversal healing old dynamics. In quiet moments, Edward reflected on forgiveness, not forgetting, but choosing peace over pain. His narration, a emotional crescendo building from despair to elation, a smooth, uninterrupted flow for voice generation, capturing the essence of human spirit in all its complexity and beauty. Continuing the expansion, let's delve into specific scenes. The morning after the wedding, discovery, Edward's routine shattered. Instead of coffee, he paced the kitchen, heart pounding, scrolling endlessly through photos, each like a punch to the gut, calling a friend for confirmation, only to hear sympathy that fueled his resolve. The first no to Thomas's request, a phone call etched in memory. Thomas's shock turning to please, then anger. Edward hanging up, tears streaming but standing firm. The lawyer's office sterile, yet liberating. Documents signed will change. A sense of control reclaimed. Unannounced visits, Thomas banging on the door, Edward watching from behind curtains, heart aching but unmoved. Police called once when it escalated, a line drawn in sand. Clara's entry at a painting class, her smile lighting the room. Conversations flowing naturally, dates following, walks in parks where leaves crunched underfoot, symbolizing crushed pasts, new beginnings. The Italy trip, vivid Colosseums, echoes of gladiators mirroring his battles. Venice gondola rides with Clara's head on his shoulder. Tuscan wines toasting to life. The letter from Thomas months later, words of regret, actions following visits without asks, just presence, rebuilding trust brick by brick. The baby announcement, joy mixed with caution. Edward's advice on parenting, emphasizing independence. Martha's birth, hospital room filled with emotion, Edward holding her, feeling continuity. Art shows acclaim, local fame interviews where he shared his story Humbly inspiring others, volunteer work at shelters, dogs walking him more than he them, healing through service, travels expanding Machu Picchu's mysteries, Egypt's pyramids, Australia's outback, each adventure a affirmation of life. Clara's proposal on a beach at sunset, rings exchanged under stars, wedding intimate truly with those who mattered. Thomas's speech thanking Edward for lessons learned, holidays, Martha's excitement, unwrapping handmade gifts, stories around fire, health decline gradual but graceful, family rallying, support not burden, Edward's final words of love, peace in passing, legacy living on in actions, words, art, a cinematic emotional narrative flowing endlessly like time itself, evoking deep feelings for voice rendition in May's tones or any that capture soul's depth to further enrich. Let's imagine parallel lives. What if Edward hadn't said no, continuing the cycle, depletion, death alone, but he did, choosing differently, a fork in road leading to fullness. Thomas's transformation complete, becoming the father Edward was proud, husband Sophia respected their business, thriving through effort not entitlement, Martha growing into artist inspired by grandpa's tales, family vacations together, Edward and Clara joining, creating memories unmarred by past, community honors Edward with award for service, speech humble recounting journey from giver to balanced soul, his storybook published, Boundaries of Love bestseller, touching millions, film adaptation, cinematic indeed with actors portraying emotional depths, but the true script, his life smooth, emotional, profound, without punctuation, a river of words for voice generation, eternal in its flow and impact, yet to reach the word count. Let's add layers of description, the suburban home cozy, but worn wallpaper peeling from years of neglect, Edward's hands calloused from factory work, retired now, but active in garden, roses blooming red like blood from heart pricks, the coffee mug chipped, favorite from Martha, inscribed with world's best dad, a lie now felt. The photograph dusty, but cherished smiles frozen in time, Thomas's childhood bedroom upstairs, untouched shrine to past soccer trophies, books on shelf, the wedding car discarded in trash, symbol of broken dreams, social media screen glowing harshly in dim room, photos, vivid colors contrasting Edward's gray world, Sophia's gown white pure but stained in his mind, Thomas's suit sharp but ill-fitting, character the pain physical, chest tight, breath short, panic attack almost but breathed through the call. From Thomas, casual as if nothing amiss, renovations exciting, plans shared, Edward's voice firm surprising even himself, the silence golden, Thomas's stammer, music to ears hanging up, liberation, the lawyer young efficient explaining options, Edward signing with steady hand, will to charities, animal lovers, cancer fighters, single parents, heroes like him, the locks changed, shiny new keys cold but empowering, phone blocked, peace, quiet hobbies, painting, colors mixing like emotions, canvas, therapy, book club. Books escaping reality, discussions connecting souls, Clara's eyes blue like sky, voice soft like breeze, friendship blooming, love whispering, the trip, Italy, passport stamped, adventures begun, Rome's fountains, wishing for nothing, having all, Venice's masks hiding past, pains no more, Tuscany's hills rolling endless like possibilities, home return, refreshed letter waiting, Thomas's handwriting, familiar words, new regret, action promised, coffee meeting, tentative hugs, awkward but warm conversations, deep revelations, shared forgiveness, tentative but growing, baby news, ultrasound photo, cherished, Martha's name honoring past birth, cries, joyful, hospital sense, sterile but life affirming, holding her tiny perfect renewal, art evolving, abstracts to portraits, family captured eternally, shows openings, wine toasts, applause, humbling, travels, more wonders seen, friends made, stories collected, Clara's love anchor in storms, health fade but spirit soar, family close, care given freely, not demanded. Final days, bed warm, stories told, Martha's drawings on wall, legacy, visual words whispered, love eternal, passing, quiet dawn, light golden like beginning not end, funeral songs, tears, laughter, remembered life, celebrated, book written, words flowing like this script, emotional, cinematic for voices to bring alive in May's timbre, or any resonating with soul's song, continuing the narrative with more detail on daily life, post change, mornings, yoga stretches, body mind aligned, breakfast, fresh fruit from garden, health priority, afternoons, walks, parks, birds singing, freedom, evenings, movies alone but enjoyed, popcorn salty like tears, past nights, sleep, deep dreams, pleasant not haunted, Thomas's changes, job promotion earned not gifted, Sophia dollar, business, crafts sold, online success hard won, Martha's milestones, first steps, words, grandpa's names, sweet family dinners, recipes shared, laughter, genuine holidays, trees, decorated ornaments, old new stories, Santa but real magic in bonds, art classes with Martha paint Splatter's Joy Community Events Speeches Given Inspiration Spread Award Ceremony Stage Lights Bright Speech from Heart-Touching All Book Writing Nights Typing Memories Flowing Publishers Call Success Unexpected but Deserved Interviews Radio TV Story Shared Widely Film Deal Script Writers Consulting Edward Authenticity Key Health Scare Hospital Beeps Family Vigil Recovery Strong Bonds Tighter Final Chapter Peaceful Reflection No Regrets Life Full Circle from Giver to Receiver of Love's True Form. The End. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Liberty Legends for more. Hit that like button to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.